Assessing relative quality of data collected by UAVs to generate optimal flight parameters and study area for conservation analysis by Emma Rinn, funded by the University of St. Thomas Sustainability Research Grant and partnering with the Nature Conservancy. The study area is Weaver Dunes Scientific Natural Area, owned by the Nature Conservancy. It is a sand prairie that covers over 800 acres in Wabasha County, Minnesota. Historically, it was cropped land and natural prairie intermixed. Now, the preserve has been divided into several units, which are burned in parcels over many years to replicate seasonal burns, and the native seeds are spread in hopes of returning the land to its original sand prairie. Additionally, non-native pines and other invasives have been removed from the preserve, and several rare species, including the Blanding's turtle, have been subjects of research and monitoring for the Nature Conservancy. As you can see from the pictures, the land has been flattened out and trees are in clumps rather than spread out naturally. Signs of agriculture are readily available, and you can see how the land is burned in parcels. According to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Division of Conservation Planning, restoring prairie is important because of biological diversity. Prairie provides genetic material useful in agriculture, medicine, sciences, and industry. The prairie also regulates natural cycles as well as the quality of air, soil, and water. Natural ecosystems provide living museums of our natural heritage and are sources of beauty, recreation, and inspiration. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service also states that native grassland prairie is home to a complex network of organisms. Several reasons for preserving and restoring grassland prairie is because grassland bird species have shown a steeper decline than any other group of North American birds. Also, declines of 99.9 and 99.6% have occurred in Iowa and Minnesota respectively, according to a 1994 study. Only 5%, as of 1994, of the original tall grass remains for preservation consideration throughout the entire historic tall grass range. Prairie ecosystems are a vital part of our life. Many of them have been converted to agriculture due to their fertile soils. Sadly, in a 2004 estimate, the USGS found that only 2.4% of the original northern tallgrass prairie remains due to agriculture. For this study, I will be using a drone, also known as an unmanned aircraft vehicle. Defined as an unmanned aircraft that is controlled by radio or computers, drones were initially used and developed for military purposes. Now they are used in diverse fields including surveillance, transportation, observation, agriculture, and leisure. Recently, people have come to believe that the use of drones in the ecological field has been used without any understanding of the error range and resolution for each model of drone. This means that drones could be used more efficiently. However, few studies have been used on how to tap into that. This study utilizes a UAV or drone to assess the relative quality of data collected by a UAV to generate optimal flight parameters and study areas for conservation analysis. As I said before, the study area is in Weaver Dunes. To do this, a plot of land with a diverse terrain landscape will be the area in which flights will be taken in order to collect the most data possible. From there, 3 flights taken at different altitudes, 20, 30, and 40 meters, will be the main focus of this study, examining different resolutions, speed, photos taken per flight, and overlap. This will lead to developing a guide for using a drone and drone apps, as well as an overall best practices, and an analysis of the data collected. So why use drones? Well, here are 4 main reasons why drones are advantageous. Drones are user-friendly, non-invasive, easy to access and affordable, and have higher accuracy and precision than their counterparts, such as satellite imagery. First, we will go over the user-friendly aspect of drones. Drones are also non-invasive. Drones are also non-invasive. Many fields require people to go out into the field and collect data. However, this can be very intrusive and often detrimental to the ecosystem they are studying. The benefit of using a drone is that the drone will not actually come in contact with any of the ecosystem. Also, when people are sent out into the field, they can be intrusive and often have inaccurate visual plant counting, whereas drones would have undeniable high-tech plant recognition and color band software. This would not only bring additional data into the study, but also probably be faster and cheaper. Additionally, drones are easy to access and affordable. In a study done on solar panels, it was found that drones are easy to acquire, affordable for most application practices that would require an alternative such as satellite data or fieldwork. And when used with the right software for the application, drones can be cost-effective and save time. Finally, it can be agreed that drones have higher accuracy and precision than either satellite data or human recorded data. In a study done in Korea, scientists took drone-based images and compared them to images provided by the National Geographic Information Institute of Korea. Their study found that the drone pictures were far more accurate and detailed compared to the images provided by the National Geographic Information Institute of Korea. This shows that drone-acquired pictures are far more accurate than satellite-acquired pictures. So looking at our drone, we will use a DJI Inspire. Additionally, with our DJI Inspire, we will use the DJI Go app that controls the drone itself, and then also Map Pilot. The DJI Go app is the controller app that will link the drone to your phone or other device. Different flight modes will be utilized in collecting different sets of data. Primarily, we will be using waypoints through the Map Pilot app. The Map Pilot app decides the study area, and you can control how big it is and in what shape or form. You can upload these flight paths onto the drone and it will fly by itself on the designated path, taking pictures at equal intervals. The DJI Inspire UAV, when paired with the Map Pilot app, relates speed, photo overlap, and pictures taken during a flight pattern, based on the desired altitude or centimeters per pixel, also known as resolution. Depending on the flight pattern and altitude, which can be intermixed with the resolution, the speed and size of the map will be determined. So taking our data from the field into the lab, this is an example of how data collected by the drone can be turned into 3D imagery. To do this, I use Drone to Map software. It is by ArcGIS. Drone to Map software takes the images and data taken from the drone and turns them into either 2D or 3D maps. Here are the flight layouts. We did a 20 meter, a 30 meter, and 40 meter flight. Although all of the flights came short in comparison to the original, all of them covered the same area, as you can see by red. Here is the initial data collected from the 40 meter flight. Overall, the 40 meter flight was the best flight of the three. 40 meters can capture the large vertical range of terrain and have the quickest flight time, since the higher up the drone is, the more area that will be covered per picture. Additionally, the drone-to-map stitching output was largest and most uniform of the three flights, as you will see. Unfortunately, photo overlap and resolution was not super accurate, although still more accurate than satellite imagery. Of the three flights, this had the lowest quality photography just because it was the highest up and had the largest resolution. The 30 meter flight showed that there are limits to the drone and how data can be collected. There is an empty space occurring in the middle of the map. This is where the trees would be. This shows that overlap and stitching can result in obvious errors or just become exempt from the map. The reasons why will be talked about soon. Finally, the 20 meter map. Again, the areas in which the trees occur are exempt from the map. However, this was the highest quality resolution and detailed vegetation map. This had the most picture overlap because more pictures were taken during this flight. Unfortunately, the stitching can be inaccurate due to the vertical shifts in terrain, such as trees to ground, and the stitching overlap was not entirely accurate because of which. Also, this was the longest flight just because the drone had more area to cover. Overall, the results of multiple altitude flights has been good. We found that using a drone gives a good overview of real-time data of a landscape. It is easy to use and access and results in high detail and pixel accuracy of a landscape. And using drone footage can give people a good view of a variety of plant species. And drones can capture areas in which large-scale photography, such as satellites or helicopters, may not work. Some of the problems we found was the Map Pilot app does not always cooperate in uploading. However, future updates may change this. Also, our multiple flights had slightly different GPS coordinates. This could be fixed with georeferencing. However, we were unable to use that. Also, the higher accuracy flights, closer to the ground, used more time and battery. When we compare data, we can look at overlap. So we have the 40, the 30, and the 20 meter. As you can see, the 40 meter had the most green overlap, whereas the 20 meter had the least. When we look at resolution, you can see that the 20 meter had the highest resolution when focusing on a flower. Also, you can see from this resolution photo that the placement of the flower is slightly different in each of the photos, again putting emphasis on needing ground control points or georeferencing to fix such a problem. So looking at the three layers, you can see that the 40 meter flight has the most overall data, whereas the 20 meter flight would have the highest accuracy and imagery. The 30 meter shows the in-between point, showing where the data becomes skewed or missing from the tree line. This elevation profile of profile 1 in yellow can be seen in the elevation profile box. The meters can go from about 230 to 232 meters. This shows that the study area itself was not indeed flat. The study area slopes, which would affect the visual results of the data collected. The elevation changes from the terrain, such as trees, would also impact the results of the data collected. This is why. So when a drone flies, it starts at elevation 1 in the sky, and then ends at elevation 2. So it only knows those two elevations. It takes the pictures at equal intervals. However, when it comes in contact with a tree with its images, the tree would cut off the image, only showing the leaves and not anything underneath. And that would delay any overlap, as you can see from the first tree and the first two drone pictures. Secondly, if there was slope in any of the images, the drone would not recognize that and think of it as a flat land. So if an image contained high slope or low slope, it would not understand and the stitching would be inaccurate. So not only does the drone have to deal with ground elevation changes, but also terrain elevation changes. Also, if there is even a slight wind, the leaves on the trees will flutter, resulting in the images not being equal, as points cannot be taken, which explains why there cannot be any images of the trees except for the 40 meter, because the 40 meter flight was far enough from the trees that small points could not be taken. So here is just the example of how the flight can be taken, and it creates a 3D textured mesh and a 2D orthomosaic. So when comparing data, we can look at 4 different points taken all right next to each other. Here are the first 2 photos. As you can see, there is very little overlap. You might be able to recognize on the very left-hand part of both photos that there are some taller trees and brush. However, the areas of equal points is not high. Similarly, looking at the next 2 photos, there are few recognizable traits. As you look at these 2 photos from the previous slide, enhanced, you can see that there is a slight open space among the trees. This is one of the few points within the 4 pictures that there is any overlap. Upon further examination of the photos, however, it can be seen that from afar they look similar, but when looking at the pixel resolution, they are not identical. This explains why the drone to map data was unable to stitch together an orthomosaic in this area. The 2 photos, although taken right next to each other, had, at pixel resolution, different areas. Here is an example of the slight leaf movement. As you can see, even from second to second, the leaves can change, resulting in different images from one photo to the next. As seen from the previous slide, there is a trade-off between resolution and altitude. There is a trade-off between altitude and resolution. As altitude is gained, resolution becomes less detailed. This can be important when considering your study area because some study areas, such as a tree-filled study area, may require a higher altitude to attain data that will not be affected by the wind from the drone's lift. Drones will naturally carry wind blowing downward due to their propeller movement. As you saw in the previous slide, There can be lots of different movement from the leaves when the drone flies over them. So to combat that, the drone has to be high enough away that the wind created will not affect the tree. Looking at the white and gray lines in between the points where the photo was taken can show just how certain or uncertain the data is of comparing one point to another relatively. Some discoveries were made from flying at multiple altitudes. Firstly, the flights covering different altitudes of terrain and surface should be flown at higher altitudes, for example 40 meters, to ensure that both terrains are registered in photos. Alternatively, flights covering a terrain of similar altitude, such as grassland prairie, should be flown at a low altitude for highest resolution possible, such as our 20-meter flight. Perfect layer results are still impossible if not using a GPS receiver for accuracy or ground control points when comparing multiple layers. And for a complete study area to be covered, a buffer zone has to be included for the drone flight to ensure that the study area itself has complete overlap, and since the data has edge areas that would otherwise be insufficient in a study. Here's a study that had a very similar method to ours. They used a drone or UAV and then took the TIFF images and turned them into the samples or orthomosaics. However, one thing they did differently is they did use ground control points. So perhaps in the future we will do the same. This backs up our method, showing that other scientists use similar means for collecting data. For the final part of my grant, I had to create a gathering of best practices. While there are many online guides for flying drones, they range from 4 to 40 steps. I assessed dozens of guides and created several instructional guides of my own that could be used in the field or the classroom. I created a guide to flying drones with step-by-step instructions. I created an instructional for first-time users. I created a step-by-step guide for using the Map Pilot and DJI Go apps, and also a pre-flight checklist. Additionally, I made a day before checklist and supplies checklist, and a short guide to multiple flight modes. Also, I intermixed notes from experiences I had in the field and talked about specific occurrences or details that may happen in the field and how to deal with them. Here are some more results I have from using Drone2Map and ArcGIS software. There is a tool in ArcGIS called Shift. I thought that perhaps this could help geo-rectify the layers so that they match properly. However, I found that the geo-rectification of Shift is impossible. This is because the Shift tool can only move an entire orthomosaic by coordinates, latitude and longitude, whereas I thought it could stretch the corners of the parcels of an orthomosaic. It could not. The Shift tool does not accurately move layers in a way that can stretch portions to match a base layer. So far, geo-rectification is impossible because of lack of overlap in ArcGIS and other tools. Photo feedback during processing in Drone2Map may result in errors over dense trees because of the wind altering the leaves, therefore pixelization, and or lack of photo pairing overall. In Drone2Map, the term pre-densification was used. However, it is never defined, even online. Also, pre-densification was associated with a map that had undefined colors, so the map was deemed useless. Also, there may be possible updates in the Map Pilot software in the fall of 2017 that could make the software easier to use. Finally, Using a GPS and/or focal points could add accuracy to photo output and drone to map. This could make it possible to compare different flights. I was unable to use ground control points in my study this time around because I did not have an accurate enough GPS. However, if I was to acquire an accurate GPS, I would use that for future research. In this study, they found that the accuracy of the location of a ground control point was far more important than the amount of ground control points they had in the study. Here is my bibliography. Thank you for watching this video. Also, special thanks to Doug Shaw and David Schmidt from the Nature Conservancy.